We begin with a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court today, striking down another set of campaign finance limits and inflaming the debate over the influence of money in politics. Until today, federal law placed total contribution limits on donors for each election cycle. Donors could give no more than $48,600 to all candidates and no more than $74,600 to party committees. But the 5-4 ruling struck down those limits as a violation of the First Amendment. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the conservative majority, said, "There is no right in our democracy more basic than the right to participate in electing our political leaders." The ruling left intact the $2,600 limit donors can give to any single candidate. So what effect will the controversial ruling have on elections here in Massachusetts? Pam Wilmot is the Executive Director of Common Cause Massachusetts. Welcome back to Greater Boston, Pam.
Good to be here.
So this is a little confusing because it's a federal ruling, but it does trickle down. So the individual $2,600 stays intact. It can only to one candidate you can only give $2,600. But in this state, you were allowed to give up to $12,000 to all candidates. Did that go away too? Is it unlimited in this state?
Yes, that fell down as well, not directly by the Supreme Court's ruling, but the campaign office actually released a statement today saying they're going to follow the ruling and not enforce it. If it had gone to court, it would have fallen anyway. But the problem isn't just, the individual donors, it's the joint fundraising committees that can be put together. So what's at stake here isn't just a donor being able to give $123,000 at the federal level, but really potentially up to $3.6 million. And that's an incredible amount of money. And that really puts our democracy at risk, we feel.
All right. Well, let's bring in Peter Torkelson to this conversation. He's former chair of the Massachusetts Republican State Committee and a former congressman. Peter, some think actually this ruling is going to favor Republicans. Do you think that's true?
I think it's going to be a mix right now. If you look at a different issue, but super PACs right now, 6 of the 7 largest super PACs raising money for this cycle right now are dedicated to support liberal candidates. Citizens United unleashed money for both liberals and conservatives. It wasn't one side or the other. In this particular case, I think the decision is a good one because, one, it says that free speech is real. It's not just this abstract issue that the government can decide who has it and who doesn't. But in light of Citizens United having this decision, I actually think more money now will be reported. Under super PACs, some report, some do not. But under this provision, any increase in contribution is either going to have to be reported as a candidate contribution or as a party contribution. So there will actually be more transparency with the donations that are coming in.
Yeah, there was a sky is falling attitude when Citizens United came out. But in many respects, as Peter says, that was anonymous. A lot of people, you didn't know where that money is coming from. Won't you be able to at least track it back now?
Well, that's a race to the bottom. In fact, we can improve our disclosure. There's plenty of bills pending right now in Congress and ones that I believe will pass in the Massachusetts legislature to ensure that those expenditures are disclosed and the donors that go to outside money is disclosed. What this is going to mean is just more money. It's true, disclosure is important, but it's not good enough. When you get and are able to solicit a contribution of $1.2 million or $3.6 million, that is a tremendous gift, essentially, that you're owing to that donor. And the court had the majority of the court had a very restrictive view of what limits can be placed, and that's on a quid pro quo basis.
Let me bring Peter into this, because it strikes to the heart of this, that this idea that somehow you're beholden or that you owe something to your donors. You held elected office. Did you ever feel that way? Honestly.
I did not. I was there before the age of super PACs. We did have outside interest groups, mostly spending money, in my case, against me. But no, I did not. And think about it. If you're a candidate, if you're Barack Obama, ran for president, raised like $1 billion, okay, huge amount of money, most ever in history. And on top of that, there were outside interest groups spending tens of millions and maybe even hundreds of millions on his behalf. Now, I don't think anyone has said, Barack Obama is making his decisions, whether you agree or disagree with him, because somebody spent that money. And if you're a super PAC and you're spending $100 million for someone or $10 million, and you're not willing to say that the individual involved is somehow corrupted, then why is it if you give money directly to the party and the candidate, somehow that's going to have that effect. I mean, candidates know when groups are spending money on their behalf. What the public didn't know is sometimes it was reported and sometimes it wasn't. And again, in light of Citizens United, I think this decision is logical, but it actually brings more transparency to the process.
What is your biggest concern, Pam? That people are buying influence, buying access, or just buying an election? That people like the Koch brothers are going to be deciding who our elected officials are?
It's really both. They're buying elections and they're buying access and influence, and the court is incredibly naive to think that that doesn't happen.
Well, they know that happens.
But they say it doesn't. They say that corruption doesn't exist and that it isn't a problem unless you can prove a quid pro quo. Well, we already have laws on the books that prohibit quid pro quo, and those are called bribery. We have campaign finance rules in order to prohibit the undue influence of one or two or three or a whole set of wealthy individuals or interest groups. And I have to beg to differ. Most candidates will say, yeah, I'm going to return that call from my big donor instead of anyone else when they call and put it's access and influence. That's the way people are. It's human nature. Candidates aren't any different than you and I.
That's undeniable, because all the big party candidates, I've seen them. They have parties or times, or whatever it is, they invite their donors. They have access to them. It's undeniable.
Access is not going to change. Well, this rule does not change the fact that candidates have to raise money. It does change the probability that instead of some of that money going to outside groups, some of it might go to candidates. And if you're running for president of the United States, this decision has no effect on you whatsoever, because if you're rich enough to support a lot of candidates, you're always giving to the presidential candidate first. This is more likely to affect, candidates for Congress. Maybe they would have gotten a contribution, maybe they would not have. But if they can raise more money on their own, rely less on these outside interest groups, I actually think in the long run that is a positive step forward.
Last word.
Absolutely not. This is more big money influencing our politics, and the voters are the ones that lose.
Well, the voters are all part of this. All right, Pam Wilmot, Peter Torkelson, thanks for coming.